So when I moved to the UK 2 years ago, I really didn't know what to expect. I had heard of racism being very prevalent in some countries and not so much in others. And the UK fell under the second category. But did that mean there was no racism in the UK? Well, of course not. But I decided to be optimistic because I had traveled to a number of countries in Europe and Asia and never experienced any racism to my face. So with that in mind, I decided to move to the UK. And 2 years later, I think I'm ready to share my opinion on how racism works in the UK, whether there is racism, especially because I've traveled to other parts of the UK and not just London because it works differently. And the intention of this video is to give you a clear picture because I really love the UK. So it's not that I intend to paint it in a bad way or I intend to gloss over what's happening. But the point is to paint a realistic picture and call a spade so that you have a very honest idea of how it is in the UK and understand how racism works and to know what to expect so that you can make an informed decision about whether you want to move to the UK or not. If you're new to my channel, my name is Ashika and on this channel we talk about moving to the UK. So let me start by saying that I live in Maidenhead and Maidenhead is about 20-25 minutes away from London. So most of the people who do live in Maidenhead work in either London or Reading or Slough or Windsor or Bracknell. And because it is so close to London, a lot of people who stay in Maidenhead are not originally from the UK, they're expats or immigrants or people from all over the world. The ratio in Maidenhead isn't very high, so there are people from outside the UK, but not too many. Now it's important that I mention this because the kind of racism that you experience in the UK honestly depends, or even if you experience racism, depends on which part of the UK you are in, and it's not the same throughout the country. And maybe because there are so many people from outside the UK in Maidenhead, I never experienced any racism in Maidenhead. But that's Maidenhead for you. If you move away from the big cities and the larger towns and you go closer towards the remote towns or villages of the UK, you'll see fewer people of colour, and that's where things start to change. Now, I happened to visit Dartmouth a few days ago, and Dartmouth is based out of Devon. Devon is a coastal county in the UK, far away from all the big cities. And Dartmouth is in Devon, a small little town, which is a tourist town. And I was queuing up to get ice cream at what looked like a very popular joint. And I was next in line, and I obviously started to order. But before I could even open my mouth to order, the lady at the counter just looked at the family behind me, which was a father and daughter, and who happened to be white, and started to ask them what they wanted. So because the UK follows the queue system, I cleared my throat very gently and started to order because it was obviously my turn because I was next in line. And she very abruptly cut me off and said, no, I will take their order first because they already ordered a coffee. And I was a little surprised because for the entire duration that I was standing in the line, which was about 5 or 10 minutes, they weren't in the line before me. And I think they were also a little taken aback considering how she spoke, because I looked at their faces and they looked a little surprised, shocked. And that's the point I'm trying to make, that sometimes racism isn't about what you say. It can be about how you say it. Because I wonder if she would have reacted the same way had I been white. You see, racism is not really black and white, and that's where the problem is. And actor Daniel Kaluuya put it very well when he said that racism is not seen in England, but it's felt, and it's very oppressive. So it doesn't always have to be somebody calling you racial slurs or calling you names or telling you to go back where you came from. Racism can also be in the undertones of what people are saying versus what they're actually saying to you. And that's when I started to put a few things together in my head. I've always noticed that when I walk into these small, gorgeous independent shops, very often the person sitting at the counter takes a look at me and doesn't say anything, and I'm fine with that. But immediately after me comes in a white person, and I've always noticed that they greet them, they start this friendly banter with them, and in the beginning I thought it was a one-off instance, and then I started realizing that it was a pattern of instances and that couldn't be a coincidence. So I don't know if they don't talk to me because of the color of my skin and they assume that I can't afford to buy something, or if they just assume that I don't know English, or I don't know, but they just choose not to speak. And that's why I completely agree that racism is not always about what is said, but how you are made to feel as well. While I have not been called names outrightly to my face, other people I know have not been as lucky. So at a little village which is close to Maidenhead, a couple of Indian guys went over for meals and a drink, and at a nearby table was seated a bunch of white men who kept passing comments throughout their meal, talking about the color of their skin and saying that they should go back where they came from, and in this very under-the-table remark manner. Now, you might wonder how London is, because London has a massive expat community, a massive immigrant community, so basically people from all over the world, right? So what is the scenario there? I happened to ask an old colleague who I met in London if he had experienced any racism, and he told me that he had experienced multiple instances of racism. In one case, he was told by an old lady at a grocery shop that he should just go back to where he came from. In another instance, he was called a particular racial slur, which I'd rather not repeat, while he was just grabbing a bite at a restaurant. I asked my husband's friend if she had experienced any racism while she was in the UK, and very surprisingly, the story she narrated was very similar. So while she was grabbing a cup of coffee and walking down the road in London, somebody walked up to her and told her to go back to her own beeping country. So, like you can see, it's a pattern. Let me give you another instance. So there's an app called Nextdoor in the UK, which basically connects you to people who stay close by. And you can discuss if you want to know something, if something's happening in the area or something like that. And one of the persons on the app had mentioned that something was stolen from their house by a passerby. And if you read the comment section, there were comments by some people saying, "Did you happen to catch any particular accent?" There was another comment which very outrightly said, "Do you think they're Eastern European?" There was no indication of that. But that being said, let me be really honest. A lot of the people I have met in the UK have been extremely warm, extremely kind, very friendly, very helpful. So it's not that everyone's bad. It's just that there are a few bad peas here and there. According to the research done, it says that more than a third of people from ethnic and religious minority groups in Britain have experienced some form of racist assault. And it takes different forms. There's physical, verbal, or damage to property. And they've experienced it while they're at educational institutions, at work, and while looking for housing. The Home Office reported 109,843 racially motivated hate crimes in 2021-2022. And 43% of these hate crimes reported to Stop Hate UK were racially motivated. And there was a 19% increase in racially motivated hate crimes reported to the Home Office. According to the CNN, more than 2 in 5 Black, Brown, and minority ethnic workers in the UK say they've faced racism on the job. Racist incidents included overhearing racist jokes, being subjected to stereotyping, or comments about appearance, receiving racist remarks, or outright bullying and harassment. Another place you can experience racism is online, because people can say whatever they want to say while hiding behind their laptops and their phones, right? When Rishi Sunak became Prime Minister, all of a sudden there was an explosion of racist comments all over social media. If you happen to be reading the comments in a lot of my videos, you might see a lot of racist comments there as well. Whenever I get a chance, I delete whatever I can see if it's racist. But you know what? A lot of them still happen to come. Now, if you have a child and you plan on putting your child in school in the UK, you might be worried if they'll face racist comments at school. My son has not faced anything till date, either from the students or from his teachers or from the faculty members. And I hope it stays that way. But if you read the news, you will see that there are instances where children have been subjected to racism in the UK at school. Some of you might have the question of whether you should respond to racism or not. And it's honestly a very tricky situation, or a tricky question, to be really honest. If you are in a safe environment at a school or work, ideally you should report it if you feel comfortable. You should also ideally report it to stophateuk.org if you can, and again, if you are comfortable, and I will leave their details below. But if there is an immediate threat to your life or the crime is still going on, you should ideally call up 999 immediately and try and stay safe in the meantime. So that's my side of the story, but I want to hear from you. Have you ever experienced racism in the UK, and what form has it taken? If you're comfortable talking about it, leave a comment below so that you can help everyone who's watching this video who plans on moving to the UK and you can help them decide if this is something that they want to do or not. Tell us about instances that either you have faced or somebody you know has faced, but please remember to keep all of the conversations civil and polite, because we don't want to go around hurting anybody's feelings, especially somebody who's not wronged you. With that, I hope you found this video helpful. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't.